For 6 months, she thought she was free. She had a new name, a quiet job, a safe little life, and she was finally starting to breathe again. What she didn't know was that he had known exactly where she was for 5 of those 6 months. He had watched and waited and said nothing, not because he didn't care, but because he was furious enough to let her believe she had escaped, until the day he found out about the baby. And everything changed. This channel is dedicated to stories that get under your skin: crime, passion, mafia power, and the family ties that bend even the most ruthless men towards something softer. What this story reminds us: control is an illusion. The moment you love someone, they already own a piece of you. Hit like if this hooked you in the first 10 seconds. Subscribe for more. Comment your reaction and share this with someone who loves psychological drama done right.
She smiled through tears at the grainy image of her son. For 6 months, she was Julie Brennan, a quiet bookstore employee living a simple life. This new identity was a fragile shield. Underneath, Nora was terrified, constantly running from the ghosts of a life she'd left behind. The pictures were proof of what she was fighting for. She kept the ultrasound pictures hidden away, dreaming of a normal life for her boy. She imagined a world of playgrounds and bedtime stories, completely separate from the violence she escaped. A future built on safety and love was all she wanted. Then, a knock on the exam room door shattered everything. She expected the doctor, but it was him. Lucien Moretti walked in as if he owned the place. After 6 agonizing months of hiding, her nightmare had found her. His voice was a cold shock. "Hello, Nora." Hearing her real name felt like a physical blow. "Get out," she commanded, her voice shaking. His gaze dropped to her stomach, his face unreadable. "How far along are you?" he asked, his tone dangerously calm. Lying was useless. 28 weeks. She watched him calculate the dates, his jaw tight with fury, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "It is mine," he stated, not a question. "You have no rights here," she fired back, finding her strength. "Not after I discovered you are a killer. My son will not grow up in your world." He took a step closer. "You ran away from me," he growled. "I woke up and you were gone." She stood her ground. "What was I to you, Lucienne? A lover or just another one of your possessions?" "You built your world on suffering," she said, her voice shaking. "I was blind to it, but I see now. I saw your files, Lucienne. I know who you really are, and my son will not be part of that life." His face hardened. "You saw files taken out of context. You know nothing of the truth. Do you think I will just let you disappear?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "You are carrying my son. That makes you mine to protect." He glanced around the small room with disgust. "This is not safety. This is you playing a game you cannot win." "I have known where you were for 5 months," he admitted, the words landing like stones. "I could have found you in a week. I let you think you were free because I was angry. But that was before I knew about our son." The room seemed to spin around her. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, the fight draining out of her. "I want to turn back time," he said bitterly. "But since I cannot, I want my son." She tried to bargain. "Supervised visitation." He scoffed at the words. "You want to treat me like a common criminal." "Better he thinks you abandoned him than knows what you are," she said, the words a physical blow. He pulled out his phone. "My men will be here in 2 minutes. You can walk out with me and we can talk, or they can carry you out. Your choice." She knew he meant it. He had no remorse for kidnapping his child's mother. She desperately suggested a public coffee shop. He agreed, but she knew her freedom was over. Everything she had built was falling apart. Lucienne told her to get her things. She grabbed her purse, his eyes watching her every move. He was faster, grabbing the ultrasound photos from the counter. He studied the images of their son. A gentle finger traced the baby's profile. "He looks like me," Lucian said with a raw possessiveness. "He is mine, Nora." The baby kicked, a small reminder that she could not run from him. They walked through the waiting room full of happy families. No one noticed her silent terror. Outside, the beautiful October day seemed to mock her. She would never have a normal life with her son. He asked which way, and she pointed west. He walked beside her, tall and commanding. "The pregnancy suits you," he said after a block. He asked if she was taking care of herself. "I always worry," he said. He stopped her, his voice rough. "You were everything to me." He confessed that for 6 months he lied to himself about hating her. Then he saw her, pregnant with his child. "All that matters is the baby," she said. "He deserves to be safe." "You think I cannot protect my own son?" he asked, hurt. She told him his world of violence would put a target on their child's back. She knew about the horrible things he had done, the kidnappings, the ransoms. His face tightened. "How do you know about that?" he demanded. She found the secret files in his office safe. They were encrypted, but she knew the password. It was her birthday. His expression turned to stone. He tried to justify his actions, calling them business. "You chose not to look," he accused her. "You accepted the gifts without asking questions." She saw the deep exhaustion in his eyes, a mirror of her own. He was a monster, but he was also the father of her child. That was a truth she could not escape. "Fine," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We will talk." In the quiet coffee shop, he ordered their old favorites, a painful memory of a life that was gone. He finally broke the silence. "When is the baby due?" "January 15th, she replied. He noticed her simple clothes. "You're working in a bookstore?" "Bills need to be paid," she said, her voice sharp. "I wanted out, Lucian. I didn't want your money." He held his coffee, and she saw fresh scars on his knuckles. "I'm not going to take him from you," Lucian said quietly. "But I will be a part of his life, a real father." "I want to be his father, Nora, in every way," she scoffed. "In the middle of your criminal empire?" That's when he dropped the bombshell. "I'm getting out." Nora couldn't believe what she was hearing. "What?" "I'm dismantling everything," he explained. "It's not impossible, just difficult." She saw his hands tremble. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you left," he said. "And because this baby is a chance for me to be someone better." She was stunned. "You can't just leave an empire." "I know," he said, reaching for her hand. "It's dangerous, but I'm doing it for him, for you." She desperately wanted to believe him. "Words are easy, Lucian. Prove it." "How?" he asked. "Show me you are really leaving that world behind. Not just trying, but actually doing it. Until then, we do this my way. We meet in public. You don't try to control anything." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. "Agreed," he said, "on one condition." "What?" "You stop running. Our son deserves parents who can be in the same room." Just then, the baby kicked hard. Nora gasped. She took his hand without thinking and placed it on her belly. Lucian's tough expression melted. He felt another kick, his breath catching. "That's him," he whispered. "Our son." She saw the man she once loved, the father he longed to be, and it was terrifying. Nora pulled her hand from his, needing space. When he offered money, she refused. "I am not the woman you knew. You will not control me." He acknowledged her fear, but reminded her of their shared responsibility. Exhausted, she asked how he found her. He admitted to having her watched for protection. "You were stalking me." He replied, "I was keeping you safe from my world." The baby changed everything. He now had to protect them both while trying to escape his criminal empire. "This is insane," she whispered. He explained he was born into this life. "It is not an excuse," he said, "but it is an explanation." She needed to understand why he couldn't just walk away. "Tell me," she pleaded. He described a web of people who depended on him. Leaving, he explained, would create a power vacuum. It would start a war, and innocent people would die. "I have to do this right. I need to transfer power and convert assets while protecting innocent people. That means making deals with law enforcement." The admission pained him. Cooperating with the feds goes against everything I believe, but I will do it to be a father to my son, not a memory. Nora was stunned. The Lucien she knew would rather die than become an informant. This man was a stranger. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked. 3 months, he answered, his eyes meeting hers. "I woke up one day feeling 40 and alone. I realized men in my line of work are often dead by 50. I decided I wanted more than a decade of looking over my shoulder. So this was never about me," she stated. "Does it matter?" he asked. "My reasons might have been selfish then, but now they are about you and our son." She was not sure how to answer. "What happens if you fail? If they decide you are better off dead? Then I die and you vanish." He said it so simply. "I have everything arranged, new identities, money, and people to help you disappear. My failure will not put you or our son in danger. You can't talk about dying so casually. In my world, death is always a possibility." He reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. "I will do everything I can to see our son grow up. I will prove I can be a better man. Even if you can never forgive me, I will be the best father I can be. I will respect your boundaries and hope that one day you will not see me as the enemy. But my son will always have his father. That is not negotiable." Nora looked at their hands, feeling trapped by impossible choices. She could keep fighting him, or take a leap of faith. She could believe that people can change. "I need time," she said. "I need to think." "How much time?" "A week?" she asked, pulling her hand away. "This is all too fast. 6 hours ago, I was just Julie Brennan, preparing to have a baby alone." Lucian nodded. "You have 1 week. But do not run again," he warned. "Whatever you decide, decide it here." "What could go wrong?" she asked. He gave her a weary look. "Everything. The world I am leaving does not let go easily. If you are in danger, I must be able to find you." Fear grew inside her. "Are you saying I am in danger now? The risk was always there. I am just being honest about it now." He stood, scanning the room with a practiced eye. "I am assigning security to your apartment. You will not see them, but they will be there. Lucian, this is not up for debate. You need protection." She wanted to argue, but the baby kicked. She had to protect her child, and pride was not a shield. "Fine," she whispered. "But they stay outside. No surveillance inside my home." "Agreed." He typed a quick message on his phone. "It is done." The speed of his actions was terrifying. How deep did his power run? "I should go home," Nora said. "I will walk with you." "That is not necessary." "Humor me," he insisted. "I want to see your apartment." She found the situation absurd. A crime boss worried about her apartment security. But his concerns seemed real, and she was too exhausted to fight. "It is a 10-minute walk," she said. They left the cafe and walked into the cool autumn evening. "Tell me about the bookstore," he said. The normal question was a surprise. "It is a small, independent shop run by a woman named Margaret. We sell mostly used books." "I like it there," she answered. "It is quiet and safe. No one asks questions. Margaret hired me without references and pays me cash." She glanced at him. "I know it sounds pathetic compared to the life I could have had." "The one with a penthouse and designer clothes," he finished, without judgment. "That life had strings, Nora. You were right to cut them." "Was I? From where I am standing, it seems like the strings just got longer." He had no answer for that. Nora thought this neighborhood was safe. Now, with Lucian Moretti beside her, she knew that was a lie. He pointed to her building. "Third floor," she said. He immediately saw the flaws: the weak front door, the fire escape in the back. He called it an easy entry point. Inside her tidy apartment, he confirmed her home was not secure. "The locks are useless," he stated flatly. "A teenager could get through them." Nora felt a chill. He told her that if anyone found out about the baby, these locks would do nothing. "You are trying to scare me," she said. He replied that he was just being honest. Lucian explained that her safety was an illusion. Right now, no one knew she was important to him. But the moment they did, she would become a target. "Then stay away," she pleaded. "Maybe that would be safer for our son." His face filled with pain. He asked if she really wanted him to disappear. "I just want our son to be safe," she cried. Lucian held her face, his touch firm. He told her she could not hide from his world. Their son carried his blood, making him a part of it forever. Her only choice was if their son faced that world with his father's protection or without it. "That is not fair," she whispered. She hated that he was right. She hated that loving him meant accepting this danger. "You have 1 week," she said, her voice trembling. 1 week with no pressure. Then we will talk." He agreed, but said he was upgrading her locks. The security detail was also non-negotiable. He leaned in, kissing her forehead gently. "Take care of yourself," he murmured. And then he was gone. The next few days were strange. She felt watched constantly. On Tuesday, new deadbolts appeared on her door. On Wednesday, an encrypted phone arrived. On Thursday, a full security system was installed overnight. She should have been angry, but she remembered his warnings and felt a strange sense of relief. Her boss, Margaret, noticed her anxiety. "You have been jumpy all week," she said kindly. Nora confessed. The baby's father found out about the pregnancy. Margaret listened patiently. "He hurt me before," Nora explained. "He lied about who he was. I ran because I was scared for our baby. Now he says he is changing, and I do not know if I can believe him." Margaret offered some hard-earned wisdom. The question is not if he can change. It is whether you are willing to risk being wrong about him again. A friend, Margaret, offered simple advice. Stop running for yourself and start trying for your son. Realizing she was protecting her own heart, Nora finally called him. "I want to meet," she said. "This isn't forgiveness. It is for our child." He immediately agreed. She hung up, a tiny bit of hope fighting her fear. She had to try. The next morning, as she dressed, she wondered when she had started thinking like someone who always needed an escape plan. Nora waited in the park, her hands on her belly. The baby was active, perhaps sensing her fear. Lucian arrived looking like a stranger in jeans and a leather jacket. He brought 2 bodyguards who lingered by the parking lot. She pointed them out. He simply said he brings them everywhere. That was not meant to make her feel better. It was meant to keep them alive. She took a deep breath. She was done making choices based on fear. If they were going to do this, it had to be as equals. No more of his control, no more of his power plays. They would figure it out together or not at all. He listened, his face a mask. He admitted letting go would be hard for him. Control was how he survived. She told him he had to develop new instincts. She would not be bullied. The choice was his. He could learn to compromise, or he would only see his son during supervised visits. She told him she knew he wanted to be a real father. His hand found hers, his grip desperate. He wanted to be there for everything, to be a better man than his own father ever was. He handed her a document, explaining it transferred his primary businesses to a man named Marcus Chen. This move cut him off from illegal activities, like moving contraband or using certain warehouses. He then showed her an immunity deal with federal prosecutors. Lucian was giving them information on corrupt officials. He explained this was the only way he could be the father their son needed. She asked if they were in danger. He confirmed that he was a major target now, but she and the baby were safe because no one knew they existed. That was why the security was so important. He planned to be completely free by the end of January, which was right around the time their son was due to be born. Nora then asked what would happen if his plan failed. His contingency was a trust fund that would let her and the baby disappear and live safely. She insisted she did not want his money, she wanted a father for their child. She wanted to believe the man she fell for was real. He swore his love for her was the only true thing in his life. His criminal empire was the only lie. She admitted she still loved him. Being near him felt like home, despite the risk. He kissed her with a gentle desperation, and she kissed him back. They knew it was not a solution, but it felt like a start. The moment was broken by a hard kick from the baby. He placed his hand on her stomach, and his entire expression changed to one of pure wonder as he felt the movement. He mentioned his mother, who passed away from cancer 6 years ago. She would have been thrilled to be a grandmother. His father had been murdered when Lucian was only 15. He found him on their kitchen floor. After running for 6 months, he returned for revenge. At 17 years old, he killed the man responsible for his father's death. He told her he felt no guilt, just the satisfaction of justice. Nora felt a deep sadness for the boy who chose vengeance. She told him their son could not grow up to believe violence was the answer. Lucian agreed. He said he was leaving that life behind so his son would never have to make the same mistakes he did. For a moment, she believed him. Then a man approached, his face grim. Lucien's entire demeanor shifted back to the dangerous man she knew. There was an incident at the warehouse. 3 men were dead. The police were on their way to his office. Lucian cursed. He had sold that property yesterday, but the paperwork was not filed. He was still the legal owner. He told her someone was trying to trap him. He had to handle it before it got bigger. He cupped her face, his voice urgent. If he did not contact her in 48 hours, there was an envelope for her. It was taped under her bathroom sink. It had everything she needed to disappear. He kissed her quickly, desperately. He said he loved her, and then he was gone. The bodyguard, Michael, explained the grim truth. A professional hit at the warehouse was not a drug deal. It was a bloody message for Lucian, a warning that he could not just walk away from his old life. Michael insisted I go home immediately, saying I was a target out in the open. He led me to a different car, my mind reeling from the violent reality crashing down on us. This dark world was catching up to me and our son. Inside my apartment, the silence was deafening. The bodyguard stood guard outside my door. My plan to set boundaries with Lucian had crumbled. Instead, I had admitted my love for him, right before he walked into terrible danger. A sudden wave of pure fear sent me rushing to the bathroom. This was not morning sickness. It was terror. The thought of his last resort, an envelope hidden under the sink, filled me with dread. With trembling hands, I retrieved it. Holding it felt like accepting he might already be gone. I had to know what was inside. The envelope contained fake passports and access to huge bank accounts, but it was his letter, written weeks ago, that truly broke me. He wrote that if I was reading it, he was either dead or captured. He was sorry for the danger his life had brought to mine. He urged me to use the documents, to take our son and vanish. He wanted us to start a new, safe life far away. He said I could decide what to tell our son about the father he would never know. The letter promised that the contacts provided were loyal only to him. He called me the one good thing in a life full of darkness. He said he would change his past if he could. Finally, I understood the immense burden he carried. He was risking everything for a chance at a normal life with us. Tears streamed down my face as I read his loving words. I clutched the letter, feeling the weight of his sacrifice and his deep regret. A sudden kick from my baby brought me back to the present. I placed a hand on my stomach and made a silent vow to keep him safe. The hours that followed were agonizing. Every noise made me flinch. Sleep was impossible. At midnight, my encrypted phone finally rang. It was Lucian. His voice was ragged with exhaustion, but he was alive. Relief washed over me so intensely that my knees felt weak. He said the immediate situation was under control. He explained that things were changing faster than he expected. We needed to make serious decisions about our son's safety. He asked if I could come to Boston the next day. Every part of me wanted to refuse, but I knew safety was just an illusion now. I told him I had found the envelope and read his letter. I declared I was finished with running. We would face whatever came next together. We made a plan to meet, and as I hung up, I prayed I had made the right choice. The 90-minute drive to Boston was a blur of rain and worry. Michael, his driver, was silent. Nora was walking back into the world she had run from 6 months ago. But they did not go to his penthouse. Instead, Michael stopped in front of a normal brownstone in the South End. It was a place for families, not criminals. Michael opened her door and told her Lucian was on the third floor. 7 months pregnant, Nora felt a twinge of panic with every step. She knocked on apartment 3B, her nerve fading. Lucian opened it, his face exhausted but relieved. He led her inside a secret safe house and secured the 3 locks. Lucian finally explained the truth. Vincent Caruso, a man he was testifying against, had framed him for murder. The goal was to destroy his credibility as a witness. It took 6 hours with lawyers to convince police he was not involved. Caruso is a desperate man, and now he knows about you, Nora. Providence is not safe anymore. It is only a matter of time before he figures out who you are. I thought you were protected, but I was wrong. We are in terrible danger. You have 2 options. First, you can disappear to another country with a new life, but you must go alone. Second, you can come back to Boston with me. It is dangerous, but we will face this storm together, and our son will know his father. She realized his dangerous side was what could protect them. Nora agreed to stay if he promised one thing: complete honesty. He called her his partner, vowing they would raise their child together. He took her hand, sealing the deal. She asked how long until they were clear. He said 6 weeks, a risky race against her due date, but he insisted they were stronger together than apart. Cupping her cheek, he said, "I love you, Nora. I will do anything to keep you and our son safe." He admitted that working with the authorities makes him a traitor in his old world, but he would betray any code to be a father. His honesty finally reached her, and she agreed to stay, but with an escape plan. From now on, they were a team. "So this is our life now," she said dryly, "playing house while your world burns down." He showed her around the tiny apartment. It was a world away from his penthouse, but it felt more like a home than a cage. In the empty second bedroom, Nora tried to picture their son. "We need to go shopping," she said, her voice firm, "for everything." "You should rest," Lucian urged. His gentle tone was her undoing, and she sank to the floor. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered, her hands on her belly. "How to be terrified and in love with you at the same time." He sat beside her and took her hand. "We do it one day at a time, together. I refuse to believe our son is doomed by my past." The next few weeks were a strange mix of danger and domestic life. They created a quiet routine, a fragile sense of normal guarded by round-the-clock security. While his empire crumbled through phone calls and legal meetings, Nora unpacked boxes, slowly turning the safe house into a home. It was a strange peace amid the chaos. Lucian spent his days in tense meetings, returning each evening looking exhausted. One night, they battled the confusing instructions for the baby's crib. "This is absurd," Nora laughed. "You can run a criminal organization, but you cannot build a crib." He managed to smile. "My old work came with better instructions." His smile faded. "I'm terrified I'm going to ruin him," he admitted, his voice rough. "That I'm too broken to be a good father." She cupped his face. "You think I'm not scared too? We will figure it out together." He kissed her then, slow and deep, filled with all the words they had not said for weeks. "We should not do this," he murmured against her lips. "Why not?" she asked, pulling him closer. "I am tired of pretending. I am tired of being alone in the next room, and I still love you." That broke his control. "I love you too," he confessed. "I am done pretending." He took her hand and led her to his bedroom. They found a moment of happiness, feeling peace despite the chaos. But just 3 hours later, a phone call shattered the calm. The loving man was gone, replaced by a dangerous soldier. "What happened?" she asked, her own fear returning. Suddenly, Lucian's phone rang. Caruso had tried to harm a federal prosecutor. This foolish act sped up the entire legal case. He told a frightened Nora to pack an emergency bag, promising he would keep their family safe before rushing out. Nora waited alone, her fear growing with each passing hour. At 3 in the morning, Lucian returned. He looked worn out but triumphant. He announced that federal agents had arrested Caruso. The immediate threat was finally over. He explained that in 3 more weeks, he would be completely clear, just before her due date. They could finally live a normal life. But later that night, Nora woke up to intense, gripping contractions. Their son had other plans. She woke Lucian, telling him she was in labor. He sprang into action, calling for the car. She worried it was a month too early. He simply said babies come when they are ready, and they rushed to the hospital in a blur. It was too early. Nora gripped Lucien's hand, her fear a sharp pain. The doctor offered reassurances, but the room was a chaos of machines. Lucian was her only constant. "I'm scared," she whispered. He met her gaze, his own fear hidden behind a firm voice. "He's strong, just like you." Then the hours blurred into waves of pain, each one worse than the last. The pain was an all-consuming fire. Through it all, Lucien stayed, whispering encouragement when she screamed. "I can't do this," she finally gasped. He pressed his forehead to hers. "Yes, you can. You are the woman who survived loving me. You can survive anything." But as another contraction hit, his phone rang. It was the one call he absolutely had to take. His lawyer. The final transfer. "Go," she urged, trying to sound brave. "I will be fine." He promised to return in 10 minutes. But their son had his own schedule. 20 minutes after Lucian left, her water broke. Soon after, the doctor told her it was time to push. "We need to wait for his father," Nora pleaded. The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm afraid the baby cannot wait." In that moment, she knew she was alone. So she pushed with every ounce of her will. She could feel her son moving closer. Just as the doctor announced she could see the head, the door burst open. Lucian was there, his phone still in his hand. Relief washed over her. He took her hand. "Just stay with me," she begged. And with one final push, their son entered the world. A perfect high cry filled the room. They placed the tiny baby on her chest. Love, so fierce it was almost painful, cracked her heart wide open. She glanced up and saw tears streaming down Lucian's face, his careful control gone. "He's perfect," he whispered hoarsely. The staff quickly confirmed their son was healthy, 7 pounds and 2 ounces of beautiful early perfection. "Theo," she said softly, deciding his name in that moment. It meant gift. A little later, Lucian's phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression unreadable. "It is done," he said quietly. "The final transfer went through. Everything from my past life, it is all gone." She held their son, the gift they never knew they needed, and understood the sacrifice he had made for them. The businesses were finally legitimate. He was free. She held their son, Theo. He was born 12 days before Lucian's final deadline. It felt like a sign. "What now?" Nora asked. "Now we go home," he said, kissing her and then the baby. "We build the life we fought for together." In the hospital, they learned how to be parents. He mastered changing diapers. She figured out breastfeeding. They learned to be a family. Seeing Lucien with his son was a shock. This man, known for his violent past, was incredibly gentle with baby Theo. He was clearly terrified of being a father, but refused to let fear win. A social worker visited to assess their situation. Lucien explained they had a 2-bedroom apartment and that his old career was ending. He was moving into real estate. Nora backed him up, saying they were committed to raising their son together. That night, Lucien shared amazing news. The federal trials were finally scheduled. After he testified, his past would truly be over. He would no longer have to look over his shoulder. He told Nora he wanted a boring future, where their biggest problem was picking a preschool. Nora agreed that it sounded perfect. Their new life felt impossible, but they were making it happen. Imagine escaping a life of crime, only to face your toughest challenge yet: a newborn. Lucian sorted through hospital papers, his voice tight with worry about feeding schedules and jaundice. Nora just watched their son, Theo, sleep peacefully. She assured him she was fine, even though women have done this for ages. That first night was a cycle of waking every 90 minutes. By 4 in the morning, their exhaustion turned to laughter. Nora looked at Lucian, once a feared crime boss, now just a tired dad. She realized this was the most normal and miraculous thing in the world. The days soon blurred together. Nora healed while Lucian dove into fatherhood, reading every baby book he could find. Christmas was a quiet haze of diapers and feedings. But his final testimony was set for January 15th, and the old tension returned. He worried the justice system would fail them, that his testimony would not be enough. Nora reminded him he had done everything right. She told him to have faith that their sacrifices would not be for nothing. The night before, Lucian stood over Theo's crib, his heart breaking with fear. He finally confessed his greatest terror to Nora. He was afraid of failing his son, of becoming a father who could not protect him. She took his hand and told him he was already the opposite of a failure. She said his love and his choice to change were all that mattered. "You are enough," she told him. They held each other in the dark, gathering strength for the day ahead. The waiting was endless while Lucian gave his testimony. When he finally came home, Nora saw the relief on his face instantly. "It is done," he said, his voice weak. He was completely clear, totally free. They hugged, with Theo between them, as months of tension finally broke. Lucian was free to just be a father. That night they celebrated with takeout and sparkling cider, toasting to a new beginning that was real and precious. They dreamed of a boring life, full of normal worries like preschools. 3 months later, they moved into a new home in a neighborhood filled with families. Lucian started a legitimate real estate company. It was not as thrilling as his old life, but he was home for dinner every night. By March, the trials were over, and his old associates were behind bars. The news called him a criminal who saved himself, but they did not know the whole story. He had saved his family and become a good man. On Theo's first birthday, they had a party in their new backyard, filled with neighbors and friends. That night, Lucian gave Nora a small box. Inside was a silver bracelet with a tiny charm of Theo's footprint from the hospital. As he fastened it to her wrist, he told her she had given him a second chance he never deserved. She had given him a son and a reason to be a better man. He told her she gave him a reason to rebuild his entire world. Then, full of emotion, he asked her to marry him. He said it was not for convenience, but because he truly loved her. He wanted to be her husband and Theo's father forever. Nora whispered yes. They married that June in a small courthouse ceremony. It was a simple, beautiful start to their new life. The following years were wonderfully ordinary. Theo grew from a baby into a happy, curious preschooler. They bought bikes, went to the zoo, and handled everyday challenges together. On Theo's 5th birthday, Nora found Lucien watching their son sleep. He said that 5 years ago he was facing prison. Now, he was just a dad, worried about his son starting kindergarten. Nora hugged him, knowing he was so much more. Nora called him proof that people could truly change. Lucian held her, explaining every sacrifice was for their son, Theo. He wanted Theo to live free from the weight of his father's past. Nora assured him they would one day tell their son the whole truth. He agreed, wanting Theo to know we can choose to be better. Watching their son sleep, the boy who gave them hope, he whispered that he loved her. Nora held him tight. Against all odds, they had made it. Years later, Lucian told an older Theo the entire truth about his violent history, hiding nothing. After a moment, Theo simply said that his father had changed. Lucian explained he had to become the man their family deserved. Theo then asked a profound question, wondering if changing was a one-time event or a daily effort. Moved by his son's wisdom, Lucian's throat tightened. He confirmed that every single day, he works to be a better man than he was yesterday. Theo nodded, then immediately asked if they could still get ice cream. Lucian laughed as the serious mood vanished, replaced by the simple beauty of fatherhood. That quiet life was worth more than any criminal empire. That night in bed, he told Nora how lucky he felt. She reminded him that they had saved each other. She also had to change by learning to trust again and choosing to have hope instead of fear. She confessed that she chooses hope every day when she sees him and Theo. He held her, thinking about the small miracle of their ordinary life. It was a future they had fought for, where bedtime stories replaced violence. He had built his first empire on power and blood, but he built his family on sacrifice and the determination to be a good man. He knew which legacy was the one that truly mattered. His former empire was now just a distant, cautionary tale. But his family was real, and it was everything. Lucian Moretti, the former crime boss, was now a husband and father. He knew he would spend the rest of his days protecting them, forever proving himself worthy of the second chance that had saved his soul. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.